Welcome, everybody. I'm Aubrey Reeves, CEO of Business and Arts. Before we begin, I would first like to take a moment to acknowledge those who came before us and our commitment to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous nations. I'm speaking to you from Toronto on the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and continues to be subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Three Fires Confederacy of the Anishinaabe to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Today, the meeting place of Toronto and all of Turtle Island is home to many Indigenous peoples, some of whose names are no longer remembered, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work, to live, and to meet on this territory. Welcome to the May edition of the Business and Arts Speaker Series. As we begin, I would like to thank our presenting partner, Power Corporation of Canada, and supporting partner, Manulife. Usually our speaker series hosts a panel of guests, but today's session is a more intimate one-on-one conversation between Jason Maghanoy of St. Joseph Communications and our own Business and Arts Creative Director, Karran Sahadeo. This gives us an opportunity to hear more in-depth case studies from Jason about how he has adapted and evolved some of the marketing and engagement strategies for St. Joseph publications, such as Toronto Life and Chatelaine. At the top of this afternoon's session were some highlights about the Business and Arts podcast series, which provided stories and case studies from a variety of arts organizations, both large and small. I encourage everyone to check out the podcast as there are some fantastic in-depth discussions that also relate to today's topic. Finally, just a couple small housekeeping items for today's session. Only the presenters and moderators will have their microphones on today, so please submit your questions in the Q&A box and vote for the ones you think are most relevant and you would like to hear answered. The session is scheduled for 1 hour, and we will try to leave ample time for everyone's questions. We're also happy to have ASL interpreters from Toronto Sign Language Interpreter Service with us here today. So thank you, everyone, and now I will pass things over to Karran.
Thank you, Aubrey, and welcome everyone to May's speaker series about marketing, innovation, and engagement strategies with Jason Maghanoy. Before I introduce Jason, I wanted to encourage those in the audience whose organizations have changed the way they've conducted business in an innovative way to let us know in the comment section. Share your knowledge. That's what the speaker series is all about. In today's session, Jason and I will be having a conversation about what the past year has looked like for both St. Joseph Communications and Business and Arts. We will chat about adapting programs that were grounded in in-person events, launching new and untested product and content, expanding audience bases, and reaching and reacting to their needs, and what this investment will look like in technology and community 5 years down the road. For a little bit of background in this session, Jason and I had a very similar conversation a year ago for Toronto Life Insider Talent Workshop. And I'm very interested to see the evolution of our thought process. We'll link that video in the follow-up email for those who are interested in taking a look. All right, Jason Maghanoy is a graduate of McGill University and the National Theatre School of Canada's Playwright Program. Currently, he is Head of Business Development at St. Joseph Communications Media with a focus on digital innovation, revenue strategy, and premium membership, as well as the Associate Publisher of Canadian Business. Prior to St. Joseph Media, he was the Director of Revenue at Now Magazine, Senior Development Officer, Corporate Partnership at Canadian Stage, the Manager, Community Investment at Toronto Arts Foundation, and Sponsorship and Advertisement Coordinator at TIFF. In addition to his work in corporate partnership development and digital media, Jason is considered one of the brightest emerging leaders in the city of Toronto. He is a mentor at the Ryerson School Venture Zone, a member of the Work and Culture Board of Directors, a member of Luminato's Board of Directors, a member of the Advisory Council for Toronto General and Western Hospital Foundation, as well as a member of the TELUS Community Board. Jason is also a playwright. He's been a playwright in residence at Theatre Passe Murray and Young People's Theatre. He is a member of the Banff Playwright Retreat, a former member of the Tarragon Playwright Unit, and a finalist for the Lila Atchison Wallace American Playwright Fellowship at Juilliard. Currently, he's the playwright in residence at Alberta Theatre Projects, and was a member of the Playwrights Retreat at the Stratford Shakespeare Festival. Jason, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for taking the time and for hosting me. And it's so awkward hearing my bio. It's really long. I'll shorten it next time.
Oh man, I need a drink of water after that one. All right, so let's talk virtual pivots. You know, that dreaded word pivot. A few years ago, Toronto Life Insider membership program was based around exclusive in-person social and cultural events. How does that program survive a pandemic?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I mean, I think that one of the things that, when we launched the membership program, it was an urban experiences in real life platform. And when we were going to pivot, we just focused on two things. The first thing was resilience. That was one of the main themes of what we were doing. And the focus on infrastructure. So we took a step back, we got 30,000 feet in the air, and we focused on improving just the overall tech stack for the product. So we were doing things like, what is it running on? Can we add simple things like auto renewal to the product? Because we didn't have that before. And then once we built out sort of the infrastructure and we rebuilt it and we made it a little bit more resilient, then we were able to innovate on top of that. So big part of the innovation, and I wouldn't even call it innovation, just basically trying a lot of different things. We had to constantly adjust the value proposition. So the main value proposition was people use it to get curated events in real life. So we had to basically change that. We were adding things like contesting, we were adding virtual experiences, we were adding direct-to-consumer programs like alcohol delivery. And one of the things that happens when you're adjusting a value proposition is that the pricing changes for it. Our user value was about $125. That's how much a membership cost for the year. That had to change. So we had to adjust pricing and make sure that we landed on a price that wasn't killing our user value. So we landed at about $80. So that's where the membership is right now in terms of sales. So the bottom line was we went from an in real life urban experiences platform, and then we pivoted into this like really interesting type of streaming service that occasionally sends stuff to your house. So when you pivot into that kind of a business, all of a sudden you have to function differently. So there's a certain amount of virtual content that's required to make it worth $80 for the year. So we basically do virtual experiences like this every day. So it's actually been a really big pivot. Now that we've emerged from the pandemic, the value proposition has actually gotten quite good. Things are getting better on the public health side. It looks like we're emerging. We're able to sell more volume of memberships at this value proposition. Once we add in real life back into the mix, I think we're going to have a ton of success just sort of driving member sales. So we're excited about that. So we're building out the infrastructure to get back into in real life right now.
I love that you're talking about real life, and that's a question we'll get to a little bit later on. But I think just a preview of that, it's hybrid is here. Hybrid is here to stay, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
Yeah, when you say hybrid, it's this idea of, how are people sort of like, it's that line of like, where is everyone?
Mm-hmm.
And, if everyone is sort of living their life through this, hybrid model, you kind of have to be where everyone is. And you can decide not to be where everyone is, but that's going to be pretty detrimental to your business.
For sure. I think for us at Business and Arts, we were lucky. And for us, I think luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So no one's preparing for a pandemic, right? But prior in 2020, we had many conversations about what the next 5 years would look like for our organization and what we wanted it to look like. So we had a few successful in-person events, and we wanted to make that more of a thing. We wanted to create a podcast eventually that shared stories about the sector and demystify what it is exactly that Business and Arts does, right? So these conversations led directly to a lot of the public-facing programming that you'll see on our website. Last year, we had to accelerate our plans to remain relevant. And that vision for the in-person talks became the speaker series that you're watching right now. And the podcast became Arts Science Business, which was the trailer that played at the beginning of this event. And it almost kind of, almost by happenstance has happened, because earlier on in April of last year, we found ourselves in a position of being the organization that many other arts organizations looked at for information. And because of our relationships, we hosted a few sessions with the Minister of Canadian Heritage and his team about the relief efforts that were being rolled out. Now, did we know how to facilitate those conversations at the time? Absolutely not a clue. But our ArtsFest team had made the switch to Zoom earlier that year, so we heavily relied on their knowledge and we just kind of hope for the best. So I think one of my guiding principles when it comes to putting a product out in the world is, and I want your opinion on this one, is don't wait for it to be perfect because it never will, right? I think the only product feature that you shouldn't have is it be broken. As a baseline, it should work, and the features, the polish, it'll come later, right?
Yeah, I think that treating everything that you put out into the world right now as a work in progress is something that's really important. But at the same time, there's this really interesting thing. Like, I remember like when the pandemic hit, like I was invited on this panel and it was like best practices on like how to manage your pivot and how to manage business resilience. And I'm like, the pandemic's been around for 7 days. No one is an expert. We're all making this up as we go along. So I think in the end, you know, the ability to iterate, not hold on to things that are struggling, but also knowing that in the end, the core value of everything you have to do is you have to do this for your audience. You have to make sure that everything that you do, everything you iterate, everything you try is valuable to them. And if you have that really simple lens, you'll probably have a lot of success. So
Definitely. And if you just look at the speaker series as an example, it was born out of those ad hoc conversations we had with the minister last year. Now, a year later is when we started to polish it. Now it has branding, it has structure. We've built in spots where in the future, if we decide to, we can add advertisement in to generate some revenue, right? We now have a process in place to streamline speaker selection and disseminating information. None of this was in place a year ago when we first started. And even today, if you strip all of that away, the core product, which is a one-on-one or a panel session, it still works. So I think that's kind of going back to what I say. Don't put something broken that's out there, and always just wait to iterate and polish.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. So there are many challenges to building new products, and SJC is relaunching Canadian business in September. So what is the behind the scenes chatter about relaunching a brand that people already know online and in print during a pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, launching a media business during the pandemic is like a really weird idea. Don't blame me for it. But I think one of the things that we thought about was, you know, obviously people are in the digital space, they're in the virtual space. And one of the things that we're noticing is that it is incredibly crowded. It is incredibly noisy. It is super toxic. So actually analog is pretty valuable right now. There's something really great about spending time with a magazine, spending time in home with a beautiful product, that it's positive, that it's, you know, it's aspirational, and it's just a way for us to connect with our audience in a more meaningful way. And in terms of, but at the same time, because it's a pandemic, all the different ways that we built things in the past, we just threw that out the window. It literally is now, okay, we're launching this magazine, we're launching this new media brand. There's 3 pillars. There's our editorial pillar, our revenue pillar, our user pillar. How do we want to build these? How do we want to try as many different things as possible? Can we act like a startup in a legacy company? So are we building an editorial brand that has a ton of charisma? Is it diverse? Is there personality? Is there something that'll make it compelling and a must read? On the revenue side, are we creating innovative solutions that are scalable? Are we exciting clients with what we have to offer? And on the user side, are we building a really strong, dedicated audience of readers? Are we building a corporate membership program where the members find a ton of value in this ecosystem? So in the end, you know, we want to rebuild this iconic brand. We want to maximize the value proposition of print because we are a magazine company. We want to act like a startup, even though we're a legacy. And we want to make sure that our editorial pillar, our revenue pillar, and our user pillar are as interesting as possible. And I think if we can do that, if we can drive value across the board in that way, we'll have a ton of success. So far, the launch of Canadian business has been going incredibly well. We're actually killing it right now. So really excited to sort of see how the rest of the year progresses.
Nice. I like what you said about people. Well, analog is back because I think, as with most people, at the end of the day, when I sign off my computer, that's it. I don't want to go on I don't want to read a magazine online. I don't want to read news online. I've had a lot of online by the time the day's over.
Exactly. There's a bit where they're saying how there are now these big companies that are mandating, like, you got to be off Zoom on Friday. Like, they're trying to figure out ways And they've realized that, the longer that we spend in these virtual environments, it's actually pretty detrimental to our mental health. So how do we figure out a way to diversify someone's work experience, their life experience? A really good and easy way is to sort of stay away from the digital for a bit and enjoy the analog for a while.
Not quite analog, but along the lines of staying off Zoom. So we didn't actually relaunch a program, but we last year we had to cancel our Canadian Art Summit because obviously travel to Banff was not a thing and we couldn't have people congregate. And it was supposed to be in April, so very early on we had to cancel it. And after canceling, we needed to make sure this year it happened and we needed to make sure it was successful, right? So I can't speak for the programming challenges, but for the format, we went into it with just one parameter. And it's going back to what you said. It cannot be on Zoom. We cannot have a conference on Zoom. It's great for small conversations, but it's not ideal for a multi-day conference. And we needed a destination people could log onto that would have a familiar feel to a conference. For that experience, we need a platform that can handle live and pre-recorded sessions, networking features, and that can facilitate the recognition that our founders expect, because that's still a thing, right? And it needed to have accessibility features and bilingual functionalities. We needed a lot. And our events manager, Alyssa, she spent months trying to find solutions for it. And for all intents and purposes, like we had a very, very successful summit. I didn't think we had many negative comments, if any at all. Now, did everything work as expected? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We learned real quick that the best advice was to just stop, take a breath, and carry on. Because just like an in-person event, glitches happen. And what makes digital glitches even worse is that there's literally nothing you can do if your router is resetting other than just sit there and wait for it to come back, right? So stress management is key. And keeping our problem-solving heads is also key because your audience has expectations. And while they're generally more understanding these days, when it comes to glitches, we need to they're more understanding when it comes to glitches, but we need to deliver the experience that they paid for. Our audience paid for the Canadian Art Summit and we promised them one and we had to deliver. So when it comes to Canadian business, how do you manage that relationship with people who are used to what it used to be versus what it's going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the end, it was this idea of really getting a sense of who our readers were or who the new readers we wanted to be engaging with this media brand. And it's like, how are they living their lives right now? And, getting a sense of how they're living their life and then making sure that we're adding value to their life, no matter how they live their life. And that was sort of the main sort of easy type of concept. And one of the things, for example, like we're doing a new innovator summit in the fall. One of the things we're thinking about is who is the audience for this? It's CEOs. Well, what do you notice about CEOs? They're incredibly busy. Having them tune into something for 7 hours on a Tuesday is probably not going to be feasible. But can I grab 15 minutes with a CEO for them to talk about something really cool? For sure. So let's figure out a multi-channel way to allow all of our CEOs to participate, making sure that it's accessible as possible, it's as fun as possible, it adds as much value as possible. But in the end, we're just adding value to how they work and how they're living their lives. So that's the main thing. And I find it really funny when you're talking about different platforms. Like I participated in an event. It was hilarious because it was like, I was an avatar. I was like this little avatar on the event. So I was literally walking around this urban, like this amazing landscape. And then I joined a table and I was chatting with people at the table as this avatar. And I'm like, did you understand? This is the weirdest experience of my life. I adore it. And my avatar looked great. Like I was able to wear really interesting clothes, but there's this thing where you go, and you're thinking about virtual experience. One of the things that people always worry about is, will it have that same intimacy or that same feel? And you want to make sure that if you are in a virtual experience, you don't have to be super scripted. Go in there, have a meaningful and real conversation, and you'll discover that you're able to break through that barrier, which is the virtual space. And if you can do that, doesn't matter what platform you have the experience on, what you're replicating isn't the actual walking around of it in real life experience. What you're replicating is that connection, which is why we go to in real life events in the first place.
No, it's so great seeing these growing pains, and the first draft of the pivot is how to make it exactly the same just online, and it just doesn't work. It really doesn't. So similarly to you guys, I think a lot of the thinking went into What would our audience want, and how different can we make this experience but still keep them engaged, right? So not too long ago, St. Joseph Communication launched the Chatelaine shop based on the publication. So what was the rationale behind creating a shop, essentially shifting your business model? You have an already engaged user base. Why would they want to start buying products from you?
Yeah, I mean, that is sort of that is the evolution of any sort of legacy business. I mean, one of the things, like if you look at like the history of a brilliant magazine company like a Condé Nast, it's like, what was driving Condé Nast? This gigantic print ad business. Well, print ad businesses are different now. We have a really great asset, which is our user base, our subscriber base. How do we figure out a way to monetize them in a meaningful way? So the first lens in launching e-commerce for the company was focusing on our readers. Is this something that they would engage with? Is this something that we could actually monetize with our clients? So reader lens, client lens. And in the end, a lot of the work that we're doing on the biz dev side is trying to build as innovative an ad stack and as revenue diverse a company as possible. So Chatelaine Shop was, e-commerce made sense for us because that brand has an incredible readership. They're incredibly engaged. It's a really big audience. There's really strong reader affinity for shopping. It's a solution that drives attribution and ROI for our clients. It's a really great turnkey user experience, and it's scalable. So if it worked out on Chatelaine, we can scale it out on the other brands. We were doing a lot of direct-to-consumer stuff. Like part of our pivot for TL Insider was direct-to-consumer, like our alcohol delivery service. There was a behavior of people buying things from us and getting them delivered to their house. The original behavior is getting the magazine delivered to their house. So we decided to give it a shot. It worked out really, really well. And then on the 50,000 feet in the air, magazine companies, media companies that I really love and admire are also moving into e-commerce. BuzzFeed is, Vogue is. So if they're doing it, I might as well give it a try.
And I think what you said before is just perfect too. It's like you tried it out with the Insider program and you saw the pitfalls, and then you reiterated it, you polished it, and then you republished it. And that's kind of like what, going back to my previous point before, is like, it doesn't have to look great. It just needs to work, right? We'll figure it all out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things too, when you start sort of evolving your business or you're changing sort of certain aspects of your business model, like downstream things change. So you're moving into e-commerce, one of the things you end up noticing is that customer service becomes a huge part of your business. So are you organized to do customer service effectively? Probably not. So you have to figure out a way to go, okay, listen, a big part of the user experience here is that people are going to freak out if they don't get a confirmation email that their credit card went through. People are going to freak out if they don't know where their delivery is. So we just need to make sure that we have a solution that we're built out in a way that that end of the funnel touch point, which is not where we tended to live in the past, that end of the funnel touch point is super, super valuable, because that bottom of the funnel interaction, that creates a network effect, that gets them using the platform again, that gets them sharing it. And that's where we basically have to invest in now that we're sort of repositioning ourselves as an e-commerce business too.
Oh, nice. So there are a lot of arts organizations on this session right now that are not from a media company, or they do not have large marketing budgets or teams. How can they expand their reach and relationship capital?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, because marketing is really easy. And when I say marketing is easy, it's this thing where you just focus on your core customer. Just focus on that persona. Who is that main audience person? Who is that core customer for your organization? Allowing your brand to add value to their life, no matter how they live their life, right? But the simple thinking is really lost in the arts sector. And I think there's a couple of issues. One is, I think there's an expertise problem. I think that upskilling is actually really important for the culture sector. The amount of times I've been in the same room as a director of marketing for a culture organization and they have no idea what they're saying, it's actually a fair bit. And then I've worked in culture. I've worked in culture. I started in culture. I am an artist. I work with organizations on the media side now. And one of the things that I think is going to be really important is, how do you sort of change the culture in culture? And what I mean by that is, there's this really tough combo that exists, which is basically, like you said, under-resourced, limited budget. So it's an environment that's very under-resourced. And at the same time, it's an environment that tends to be micromanaged. So that's not a very good conversation. That's not a very good ingredient base for innovation. So I think that upskilling is really important. I think looking outside of the culture sector is going to be really important. The conversations, that's why business for like business arts is so vital. The fact that you can bridge into all those different sectors and you can share expertise, share skill set, share capacity, that's going to be a huge thing. And I think this idea of, well, what drives innovation? Well, driving innovation actually is also, even though you're under-resourced, lots of startups are under-resourced, you're not afraid to fail. And at the same time, you also have a very clear vision and a very clear mandate in terms of how you want to add value to your core customer's life and how you want to exist as a business. I think that is just really important for the culture sector to dive into. And if they can, I think they'll see a lot more success in terms of the marketing side.
Yeah, exactly. And I would even add to that, talk to your audience, because if you're struggling to figure out how to keep your audience, talk to them, right? You're on digital now, so your work has the potential to appeal to a whole new set of people. Engage with them, ask them exactly what do they need you to do to keep them coming back, and experiment, right? That's one of the good things about having a low budget, is that you can kind of experiment, you can be scrappy. One of the silver linings of this pandemic is Business and Arts is now more of the national organization that we say we are. Outside of our ArtsFest program, our other programming tends to be Toronto-centric. And while we have a ton of work to do, we have been making efforts to have a better geographical representation. So my advice is to use this moment in time to build those lasting partnerships with other organizations and with your new audience. Speak to them, ask them what programming they enjoy from you, and use that information to let them know when you're doing something they would be interested in. I'm not saying change your whole business model to cater for these new people and ignore your core audience, but ask them, and you're doing something that got them there in the first place. So when you're doing it again, let them know.
Yeah, and one of the things I think is going to be really fascinating is this idea of this hyper focus on like that core persona. Like I remember when I was in Stratford, I would take the Stratford shuttle to Stratford. I got engaged in Stratford. Like I love the Stratford Festival. It's my favorite place.
Yeah.
But when you're on that bus going to Stratford, you get a very good idea of who the core audience is, and they're a little older. And one of the things that ends up happening is like, look, I mean, you're not going to find these people on Instagram. You're not going to find them on TikTok. You spend a bunch of time trying to create this incredible content strategy to build demand on TikTok, when you should actually be killing it in email. It's the one space everyone knows and understands how to use. It's the one space my mom is probably on right now, sending her emails. Win there, own that space. And if you can figure out a way to leverage email max for that key persona, you'll probably have a ton of success sort of growing out your audience, because of the fact that it's the one space they know how to use, they can share, it's amazing for content and storytelling, has a lot of ingredients to be an important channel for an overall culture and marketing strategy. And the amount of times I sort of like, I'll be on boards at an organization, or I'll be working with an organization, and they don't do email. It's just not something that they're that invested in. And it's like, get on it. It's a really important channel. It's going to be the most important channel in your mix.
Oh, absolutely. I think for us, we had a great like email renaissance maybe like 2 years ago, where we actually sat down and started organizing it and realized that what we were doing, our previous emailing kind of strategy, was just horrible, which is just sending everything to everyone. And once we realized that, oh, we can segment them and just send them information that's relevant to them, had a lot less unsubscribes, a lot more engagement, a lot more people showed up to our events. It's actually pretty amazing what just sitting down and cleaning up MailChimp will do for you.
I'm blown away by the amount of people who are at this event. It's incredible. Congratulations. It's pretty amazing.
Oh, no worries. So yeah, another piece of advice I would say is similar to what you were saying, is go where your audience is and engage them there. Now, am I going to advise you to get on TikTok to answer all your marketing troubles? No. Not unless your audience is there. Or if you're committed to learning the platform and how to use it, absolutely get on there. But I would advise you to consume content on TikTok, or any new social media for that, because what they do well is TikTok users are masters at storytelling and how to tell a story in 15 seconds. So I kind of, I justify my 2 hours looking at dog videos every night as research.
I love TikTok too.
It's so good. So 5 years from now, Does St. Joseph Communication look like it did in 2019, or will it be unrecognizable? Is the future hybrid?
Yeah, in 5 years, the core of what we do is we create really beautiful magazines. And I think that having that core media, get that core asset in our mix is going to be a huge part of any future that we have. But at the same time, I'm really excited. I think in 5 years, we're going to be a very powerful omni-channel content business. I think we're going to have access to really influential communities in Canada. I think we're going to be revenue diverse. I think we're going to be using our scale in a way that's going to be adding a ton of value to Canadians. And hopefully in 5 years, we'll be on TikTok and I'll be the one leading that channel. I guarantee I'll probably kill it on TikTok. So that's the hope. That's the hope for our company. We're excited and we're definitely on the right path.
Amazing. Yeah, I don't see how the future isn't hybrid. The simple reason is you can't ignore your new audience, right? You can't roll back the features and expectations you've created. For us, like a business and arts, it would mean being less accessible. Like we have ASL and we have subtitling solutions, which can't go away now, right? If we ignore digital completely, it means that we will have less access to national expertise also. We would have wasted time in investing in building these new partnerships, and we would have to ignore the new audiences we've gained and potential revenue streams. In fact, I think it would probably take more time and effort to roll back to what we look like pre-pandemic than just use this investment and carry on.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's like there's always this really great talk that happens, which is this constant wanting to reimagine the world. Like everyone is saying, let's reimagine the world, let's build the world that we want. And when it comes to our organizations, it literally is like, if there was any opportunity for you to reimagine how you want to speak to people and how you want to be, it was right now. And in the end, like if you tried a bunch of different things and certain things really landed and took off for you, that's amazing. Because now as we emerge, all those great things you did before that were part of your core business are still there. But you just have all of these additional, I call them infinity stones that you've added to your gauntlet. You're good. And all of a sudden you're this really interesting organization that has the ability to do way more across many different channels. And again, always going back to your core customer, there's lots more ways now that you can add value to their life. And if you can do that, you'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for arts organizations, the standard is already out there and the arts sector is just now catching up to it, right? If you look at, like you were saying before, if you look outside the sector, if you look at game streamers on Twitch and YouTube, they've been doing what we are struggling to do now for years, right? They've recognized years ago that to be inclusive, you have to be accessible. So they've actually built a lot of the tech that we use to run speaker series and a lot of stuff that we do. Right, so digital isn't going anywhere, and it'd be foolish to pretend that it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, before I throw it over to Monica for the Q&A portion of the session, I wanted to mention that this segment is brought to you by Arts Times Business, which is a podcast produced by Business and Arts. Last year, we spoke to arts leaders from organizations, large and small, in Canada to find out how they are adapting their programming and funding models in reaction to the pandemic. And more importantly, what they struggled with and have learned during the process. These stories and case studies are now available on our website at businessandarts.org/podcast, or by searching Arts Times Business, that's Arts, the letter X, Business, on your favorite podcast app. All right, Monica, over to you.
Thanks, Karran. Yes, so if anyone is wondering where to ask questions, you can hover your mouse near the bottom of the window, click Q&A, and that's where we're asking from. So our first question comes from an anonymous viewer, and they were asking earlier, will the webinar be talking about pivoting festival events for nonprofit organizations? So I think maybe elaborating a little bit more on successful strategies that you've seen at somewhere like Stratford would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's like Stratford became a streaming service, which I thought was really amazing, very interesting in terms of what they're doing. When it comes to festivals, it's like one of the things that's going to be a really interesting challenge is there's a certain, like I've done Summer Works, for example, 4 times, right? There's a certain experience that is built into being in the festival as an audience member and as an artist, that's gone. So if that built-in experience and that structure of experience is gone, now is an opportunity to sort of try something different. You're not going to get, like Karran said, you're not going to get it right away. But in the end, it's how do you want to reimagine this particular festival? How do you want to engage with artists? How do you want to engage with audience? And just do it, try it, and see how people respond. And then throw spaghetti at the wall. If things stick and they kill it, and there are certain things you want to keep after the pandemic is over, keep it, and then integrate that into that core structure when it's able to come back.
Awesome, thank you. I think our next question is a joke. It comes from Catherine, and it's asking, what do you mean by infinity stones? I'm intrigued.
Avengers. It's an Avengers reference. That's from Endgame. It's Thanos. He has the gauntlet, and every time he collects a stone, he gains more power.
If you're looking to stream it, they're all on Disney Plus. Okay, our next question comes from another anonymous attendee, and they ask, how does an arts organization with rich tradition of analog production, something like an opera or a choral performance, justify or approach a hybrid model when we don't really have the audience establishment yet? Hybrid doesn't feel like responding to our new current audience, and more like a shot in the dark to new audience because everyone's doing it.
Yeah, I can go first for that one. That is loaded, and I don't have the correct answer, but I'll just give you an example. They're not the same audience, right? So the people who are coming to your actual physical performance is not the audience that you will likely engage online, unless that there's someone who lives internationally or very far away from where you are. But what you can do is give people a glimpse of the behind the scenes, right? Try to get a younger audience. If you look at what Soul Pepper did before the pandemic with their, I believe it was free under 25, where they just gave free admission for people under 25 just so they can come and see. And I think that's where your hybrid comes in, is you use the digital, you use the social media to give people a glimpse of what practice looks like, of who these performers are, who the director is. And that will build up enough hype, hopefully, to get people to come through your doors.
Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting. It ends up being a very different content strategy. Like there's the analog production, but then again, what can live on social probably is that behind the scenes leading up to that special moment on the stage. I love that as a tactic. And then it's about when you have that very different content strategy, it then becomes, you have to actually do it on purpose. You have to bridge people, formally bridge them into other areas of value. So if the bridge is, if someone checks you out on Instagram Live and you want to bridge them into the 4 seasons, you have to map that journey for that particular person. Lots of different things have to happen to touch them on their way to that theater, but you have to basically map that out and you have to try it. And basically it becomes that purposeful bridge into other areas of value at your organization.
That's the amazing thing about social media too. It's always free to try. Our next question comes from Carla, and this question is, Jason, I'm from a Filipinx nonprofit organization based in Toronto. We're in the process of rebuilding and are finding that we need a lot of people on the board with specific skill sets like finance, communications, etc. How can we find these people in these industries and ensure they are aligned with our mandate? Right away, I just want to promo board link for business and arts. I'm going to drop that link and check that out because you can post for specific skill sets there. But I'll throw it over to you now, Jason.
That was a smooth move. See, that's a bridge into value. You just use Zoom to bridge them into that area of value. So here's the thing. Whenever it comes to board development, people always do that. They'll always go, oh man, we need a fundraiser. We need a marketer. We need an accountant. That isn't a really good way to build a board. It's actually the most important ingredient is, do they have the capacity to be engaged and actually care? Like you can have an accountant and a lawyer and a fundraiser on your board who never go to meetings because they don't really care. So it's this matter of, if you have 8 people who are incredibly, hugely engaged and love the organization and they're obsessed and they're all artists, then they can leverage their network to find you an accountant. And then they're the incredible champion that can get that accountant engaged. So it's this thing where it's like, first build towards engagement, and then that can easily bridge you into the skill sets you need. But in terms of if you're looking for the skill set, I think that shout out to BoardLink is a great way to start.
I just want to take it back to our previous point for a second. And Melanie Thompson in the chat said, "You won't know till you try it. Don't assume your audience won't follow you online." Our 80-plus-year-old patrons showed up in droves for our virtual offerings. So you never know.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Okay, our next question is from another anonymous attendee. And this question is, I worked for a bunch of arts organizations who weren't ready or willing to upskill. If I had stayed, I would have become totally unemployable. What do you recommend for people who aren't institutionalized and wish to innovate? P.S. Captain America for the win.
Wow, that is a hot take question. Thank you for that. I think that one of the things that is really interesting is, and I always try to say this, like if you're in a big institution, it's about sort of, are there ways that you can sort of build a little mini kingdom for yourself, or a little landscape for yourself to try things out. You know, like at St. Joseph Media, I'm in the business development department. You know, I wanted to venture into direct to consumer. I thought it was a really great opportunity, and a really good area for me to explore that was in Toronto Life Insider only to start. And it's really small, and we have like multiple brands all across the country. So is there a little area that you can carve for yourself where you can try a bunch of different things, learn a bunch of stuff, and then hopefully scale those learnings out across the institution? That's, I think, a good starting point. And then when it comes to the sort of the skill set, I think, you know, if you have the ability to do that, try and, like, I always say this, like one of the most important things when you're sort of building out any career is you just want to figure out a way to get more responsibility. So if you can figure out a way to add value to a lot of different departments in the matrix at your organization, that will, you're not necessarily running the entire thing, but you've built up enough of an accountability that you're able to sort of become employable or be more employable. So in the end, have a little niche kingdom for yourself and see what you can sort of like innovate in that little space. And in the institution, figure out ways to add value to a lot of different departments and gain more accountability. And that'll be a good way for you to become more employable.
I like that. I like the focus on the niche and what you can offer, because I think if you can do something small that will appeal to your organization, just do it. They will probably let you do it. In my personal experience, the Art Science business, that started because I wanted to know what other organizations were doing because of the pandemic. And I just did it, and no one really got in my way. And now we have a nice 10-episode kind of series of case studies.
Yeah, and that's another thing. That's another great piece of advice. Just do it.
Yeah,
just like, oh, what are you doing over here, Jay? Oh, I'm making a business.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's way better than the institution. Do that.
Yeah. Ask for forgiveness. Forgiveness, not permission.
Awesome. Our next question comes from Andrea or Andrea. Sorry about the pronunciation. And the question is, our arts organization provides programs to youth at risk. This demographic doesn't have regular access to devices to access online content or internet service data plans to allow streaming. Do you have any suggestions for engagement given these limitations?
Wow, that's a really great question. Do you want to give that one a shot?
Oh, I do not have an answer for that.
I actually have an idea for that one.
Go for it.
Well, given that you're working with youth at risk, I would think that approaching a business or a sponsor or someone of the sort who would be willing to work with that, because isn't it Bell has Let's Talk, and they jump in that for sponsorship. I think looking out for someone who aligns with the same values would be willing to make something happen that way. I don't know if Bell does pop up internet access at all, but an idea is there.
Yeah, and taking that sort of like a step further, and it's this idea of, especially when you're working in an at-risk community, it literally is about building those really meaningful relationships in the community, which you're probably already doing, and building those relationships, knowing where the youth are, and building relationships with those great organizations on the front lines are going to be really important for you to connect with them and also get buy-in.
we're actually out of questions as well. So if there is anything that you two wanted to elaborate on further, or if anyone else has any last minute questions to submit, I'll just give it a little bit. But I want to thank you both again for taking the time to answer all the questions. And thank you to the audience for asking so many great ones today.
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks, Monica. Thanks for facilitating. So Jason, where can people find you?
Yeah, people can find me on Instagram, but it's private. So if you try to add me, unless I know who you are, I probably won't, because I have a very different brand on the gram. You know what I mean? But the best way to find me is on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is the all-time greatest platform out there. So find me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, and we'll connect.
Yeah, you're so active on LinkedIn these days too. There's always something from Jason whenever I log on.
Great. It's the greatest platform in the history of platforms, I think.
Perfect. All right, well, that brings us to the end. So I'm now just going to throw it over to Aubrey, who will close us off.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And yes, as CEO of Business Arts, I'd really like to say many thanks to our guest speaker, Jason Maghanoy. We're really grateful for you sharing some innovative ideas, but also for being so frank and honest and for answering our questions from the audience. Thank you also to Karran for leading today's discussion and to Monica for moderating the Q&A. Certainly with social media, online events, and many digital marketing options, arts organizations have the ability now to have a lot more control of their media messaging and their marketing distribution than they ever had even a few years ago. So it was really fantastic to hear insights from the perspective of a media company, since that's really been your business for decades or even longer, and to hear how you tackle engaging your audiences. I think there were some really useful lessons for arts organizations of all sizes and types to think innovatively about your business models. I thought it was particularly interesting how you really adjusted the value proposition of your membership and your willingness to step away from the traditional way you did handle that membership. And I really admire your willingness to iterate and experiment while keeping the focus on how to add value to the lives of your audiences. Meanwhile, you're really showing a great deal of risk-taking with your products and trying out new things. So it's great a reminder to keep that mindset of a startup and to have an ethos of not being afraid to fail. So thanks for that. Finally, I think it's really interesting how the art sector has been encouraged so heavily from many different quarters, but particularly from funders, to embrace the digital. It's really often offered as the answer to all of our various problems. And yet you're saying analog is back, and we need to think about that. So it was a really good reminder as we reopen our organizations in the next few months to not forget about real life and all the value that it has. So finally, a big thanks to our presenting partners, Power Corporation of Canada, for supporting the Business Arts Speaker Series. And I'd also like to thank our supporting partner, Manulife. So please visit the Business and Arts website to subscribe to our newsletter and to stay abreast of details of all of our programs. So, and you can also follow us on social media. So many thanks and stay safe, everyone.